Here are the route states we have identified so far for this application. We have already created the welcome page and its associated route state. We created the product list view and its associated route state. Let's now build the product detail view and its associated route state. Based on the imaginary requirements analysis, the product detail view will look like this. We'll use Bootstrap's grid columns to line everything up nicely. The back button will activate the product list state and return to the product list view, and the edit button will activate the product edit state and display the product edit view to edit this product. Creating a new route state requires several steps, all of which we covered in the last module. Let's do a quick review. Creating a new route state requires building a view template in its own HTML file, optionally creating the controller for the view, configuring the state, and activating the state where appropriate. Now let's do a quick demo to set up the route state for the product detail view. Then we can get to the more advanced scenario, which is adding the code to preload the data for the product detail view route state. Here we are back in WebStorm. The first step is to build a view template in its own HTML file. So let's create a new HTML file for the product detail view. We can navigate to App, Products, right-click, New HTML file, and we'll name the file Product Detail View. We don't need any of that default HTML. Since these view templates are inserted into the layout template, they don't need the HTML head or body tags. So let's just delete all that. Then I'm just going to paste in the code for this view template. Let's walk through this code. Just like the product list and welcome page, the product detail view is displayed within a Bootstrap panel. This provides a consistent look for the user interface. Note that the title for the page uses the controller alias VM. So this view expects that the title is provided by the controller. The body of this page is a set of rows and columns for each product property. For example, let's look at the product name. 2 Bootstrap columns are allocated to the property name, such as name : that you see here. The next 6 columns contain the contents of the property. Each uses a binding expression to bind to the model property, and each uses the controller alias as a prefix. Notice the VM dot here. Notice that some of the binding expressions include filters. For example, the release date uses a date filter, the cost and price use the currency filter, and the margin % uses a number filter. This code displays the image. It uses the ng-source directive that we saw earlier in this course to ensure that Angular replaces the binding expression with the appropriate image URL before the browser attempts to fetch the image. The panel footer contains 2 buttons. The back button includes the UI-sref directive to activate the product list action. The edit button includes the UI-sref directive to activate the product edit action. Notice that this code passes in the product ID as a parameter. This lets the route state know which product that we wish to edit. So that's the UI. The next step is to create the controller for the view if the view needs a controller. So let's create a new JavaScript file for the product detail controller. We navigate to App, Products, right-click, New, JavaScript file, and we'll call it Product Detail CTRL. So we don't forget, let's add the script tag for this new JavaScript file now. And we'll put that under Product Controllers. Now let's go back to the controller, and I'll paste in the code. As with all of our controllers, this code begins with the immediately invoked function expression, or IFI, and it includes useStrict. Then we look up the module. This controller is going to be registered with the main module called Product Management, and register this new controller. The first parameter of the controller method is the controller name. The second parameter is the reference to the controller function. So then here is our controller function. First, we assign this to a different variable. We set the product property of VM to product. We have not yet defined where product is coming from. That's part of the preloading feature we'll add shortly. So for now, let's hard code this instead. The code then sets the page title, and the tags are defined in the JSON within an array, but we want to display them as a comma-separated list. So we can use the toString function to convert the array to a string. We'll see the result in a moment when we run the application. So that's it. That's our controller. So we've created our view template and we've created our controller. The next step is to configure the state. We're configuring all of the states in app.js. So we can just add in another state here. This code defines a state named product detail. It sets the URL fragment identifier for the state to /products/:product ID. The $product ID denotes a parameter that will be passed to the state, very similar to the product edit state. The template URL property specifies the location of the HTML file containing the view template. And the controller property specifies the associated controller, including the controller as and the associated alias. The last step is to activate the state. When the user clicks the name of the product in the product list view, we want to activate the product details state. So let's open the product list view HTML file, scroll down to the code with the product name, and replace the product name with an anchor tag that includes a UISref directive. There we have it. So now if the user clicks on the product name, the product detail state is activated. We're passing an object literal to the product detail state that defines the product ID that it should navigate to. While we're in here, let's add a button that will activate the edit route state. So we'll just add another TD here at the end. We're using an anchor tag here, but specifying a Bootstrap button class so it looks like a button. And we're using UISref to activate the product edit state. In this case, we're also passing in an object literal that includes the product ID. That way the edit knows which product we wish to edit. With all of the steps complete, we should now have a product detail feature. Let's give it a try. So we can click Product List to see the list of products. Click on a product name like Garden Cart, and you see the details. So it has the name and description, the availability nicely formatted as a date, the cost and price nicely formatted as currencies, and our tags are in a nice comma-separated list. Success! Well, sort of. If I click on any of the products, I get the garden cart. That is, of course, because we hard-coded it. So we are now at the point where we are ready to look at how to preload the data needed by this page as part of the routing. Let's do that next.